This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we could probably spend our whole segment with our next guest just talking about all the things that he has done, the companies he has created, and why he's not stopping. He's got a new venture that was announced just last year. And he is out with a new book published this past week. With us and back with us is Brad Jacobs, founder and chairman of the freight services provider XPO. Customers, a broad swath of kind of the global economy, if you will, some of the world's largest. So Boeing, IKEA, Home Depot, Lowe's, Disney, Amazon, Walmart, so many more automakers as well. He has started 5 companies, Brad has. He's currently also co-founder of United Rentals, former chair of United Waste, another company he started. And I think you might all recall that last fall when we had him on, we reminded him and everyone that he has been described as a numbers guy, a serial entrepreneur. So we are delighted to have him back. His new book is called How to Make a Few $Billion. He's back with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. I'm rushing because I do want to get you here. Hello, welcome back. Congratulations.
Hello. Thank you, and great to be here.
It's great to have you here. How are you? How does it feel to have this done? And how are you feeling more broadly about kind of the world at large? There's a lot going on already in 2024. That's always a lot of questions.
It always is. You look at any year for the last 50 years, there's always stuff going on.
Is that how you feel as a leader? Like you just say, even
yeah.
Wars, and people talk about the hotspots overseas and maybe this being a third world war, if I go kind of to the extreme, you're just saying it's just another year where we have a lot being thrown at us.
Yeah, and every year it seems like, well, this year might be a little bit different. We're this close to nuclear war, and we're always this close to nuclear war. That's not a new thing.
Doesn't change you in terms of business investment, what you want to do. You kind of move ahead.
Yes. I try to find business plans that are not dependent on calling the macro correctly. As long as I don't get in at the rock bottom of the cycle or the rock top of the cycle, I'm okay.
Where are we in the cycle?
I think we've started to see the economy slowing down for sure, here and in Europe. I think it's going to continue to slow down. And depending on what the Fed does, it could start picking up. But it depends on what the Fed does.
Is that more an issue of what the Fed does versus the wars overseas, and we're looking at the Red Sea and ships not being able to go through? We're worried about, does the supply chain already, have some problems in it, and maybe it even gets worse? Is the Fed more important, and really global central banks?
The Fed is more important than what the Houthis are doing. The Houthis are driving, the Houthis, if you want to look at it in economic terms, are inflationary because they're driving up shipping costs, which will be passed along to consumers in the end. But the Fed is the overall stimulator or slower downer of the economy.
Mm-hmm. So that's more important, yeah.
Well, there is the big debate that we talk about every day is like, will they or won't they in March cut rates? You say the economy is dependent on what the Fed does. What do you think the Fed should do?
I think the Fed should keep looking at the data and ignore everything else and go by the data. If inflation cools down more, then it may make sense to start lowering rates. If inflation continues to rear its ugly head, then it's not the time to be lowering rates.
Are you seeing in your various businesses what you're hearing from colleagues, what you're hearing from associates? Is inflation rearing its ugly head again, or does the Fed have this tamed?
It's more slowing down and having slowed down than inflation coming back. So I look at wages a lot since that's a big part of all of our businesses.
Yeah.
Wage growth has slowed. Input costs are still going up, but they've slowed. Rents, at least, have gone up, but they're going up slower. So it does feel it's slowed down quite a bit.
Brad, are you holding on to workers?
Yeah, much more than, well, first of all, we couldn't even find workers a couple of years ago.
Right, but I'm just curious, are you still worried about like losing someone and not being able to, or letting somebody go if you're starting to see some softness? Would you rather hold on to a worker at this point?
Well, you always want to hold on to your talent. And in the book, I talk all about that. That your number one asset are your people, and you got to make sure you have A+.
But you know what I'm saying, that when you run a publicly held company, and if you're worried about any kind of slowdown, you've got to start to look at your costs again. And workers certainly play into it.
And you should be looking at your costs in every part of the cycle. You should be managing your costs intelligently.
All right. So having said that, when you think about capital expenditures, you're comfortable to move ahead?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm about to start a new company.
You have started a new company.
Yeah, well, almost.
Almost. Well, where are you with that? Help us out with that, because we've talked about it with you last year. We're talking about QXO.
Right.
Tell us about where you are. And you're looking to buy businesses, from what I understand. It's all about kind of moving businesses or materials around in North America. So where are you in the process?
North America and Europe.
And Europe.
So it's exactly, I did exactly what I said I was going to do when I saw you last time. So we've agreed to put $1 billion pipe, equity investment into a very small cap company. We're then going to spin that company back to its legacy owners, give them a $2.5 million dividend, give them a small, less than 0.5% of equity ownership in our new company, QXO. And we'll have a pure play called QXO, which will consolidate the $800 billion building products distribution industry.
So where are you in the process?
We're a couple months or so away from finishing that.
Yeah.
And depending on various approvals we have to get from the SEC and so forth. And then we'll be off to the races.
So you haven't acquired anything yet?
Correct.
But do you have like a list that you're ready to go?
Oh, yeah. We're talking to lots of companies.
Okay.
We have a lot of discussions going on.
Privately held, I'm assuming? Smaller players, mid-sized
players? Well, for
players?
right now, because our budget is only
about
$1 billion,
right.
they're all private.
Okay.
How are you going to make 1 + 1 = 3 with these acquisitions? Like, how will you bring operational efficiency?
I'm going to follow the same exact playbook that I've done for the last few decades. I'm going to buy companies that are good companies but can be better. I'm going to buy companies when you put them together, you find synergies, particularly in procurement, which is the biggest line item in building products distribution. I'm going to apply technology to be the most tech-forward building products distributor in the world. And I'm going to do all that together and get economies of scale as we get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I've put the numbers out there. I expect to be at least $1 billion revenue run rate after year one, at least a $5 billion revenue run rate.
So you're sticking to that?
Absolutely. And most importantly, tens of billions of dollars of revenue over the decade.
Why is this such a smart bet right now? This of distributing building materials in North America and Europe, you said specifically. What's the trend that you are seeing? Is it infrastructure? What is it?
Long term, there's 3 drivers. In residential construction, houses are old. Average age of a house is over 40 years,
right,
which is old. So, and there's repair and remodeling going on, and there's more construction that'll be driven by that. On the non-residential construction, they're even older. Non-residential buildings are over 50 years old on average. On the infrastructure, there's about $2 trillion of infrastructure spend that needs to be done over the next 20 years. So there's a lot of activity that has to happen here.
Why not just relax?
I'm relaxed. Do I not look relaxed?
Can you hear this, babe?
Like, why not just like?
Am I relaxed? I'm relaxed.
I mean, like, what motivates you to keep doing this? Like, you've been successful many times over and over again, and I mean,
I love the job. I've been a CEO since I've been 23 years old. It's just a fantastic job. You get to be very creative. You get to think big. You get to dream these large, large business plans. You get to recruit people you love to work with. You design compensation programs so everybody's in it to win it. And you come to work every day and you just knock down the list and make it happen. And you create huge amounts of money, not just for the employees, but for the shareholders. You know, our companies over the years have really excelled at shareholder value creation. If you looked at XPO Logistics, our initial investors made 32 times their money. If you look at United Rentals, we started, it was $3.50 a share. Today it's over $550 a share. So it's, a lot of value to be created for a lot of people. And I just love that. I take a lot of pride in that.
Just got 30 seconds, then we'll come back and talk some more. But this value creation of maybe $1 billion, you say, of annual revenue in the first year, and then $5 billion within 3 years. Can you do that if there's any weakness in the global economy or in the U.S. and Europe?
I can do this business plan regardless of what happens in the economy. If it's strong, if it's weak, if it's flat, I can still do this business plan.
Why?
Because there's 7,000 distributors to buy in the United States, in North America, including Canada. There's 13,000 to buy in Europe. There's a lot of them are owned by private equity, and private equity will have a choice. Private equity can dribble out over a number of years through an IPO and a secondary and so forth at a discount, or they can sell to me on a win-win deal where I pay them a premium.
delighted to still have with us Brad Jacobs, founder and chairman at XPO, currently also a co-founder of United Rentals, former chair of United Waste. He's also got a new investment vehicle out there that he's getting ready to make investments in, and he's got a new book, How to Make a Few $billion. I'm not quite sure where to start. So like when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you think about?
First thing I think about is how to get my head in a good place.
Okay.
Before I start getting into business. How do I center myself?
Really?
Yeah. I do a series of meditation exercises to expand my mind and to think about very large areas of space. And then I try to shrink it into very small, like down into atoms. And I have a whole spiritual exercise I do in the morning.
I love that.
I get in the zone. I like to get in the zone.
Is that different than when you were 23 and you were a CEO?
A little more now. A little more now. I was doing it then. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I do feel like these days to hear an executive say that is not that surprising. It's widely accepted that is a way to actually.
I was
get
in the
yourself
closet
centered.
when I was in my 20s.
Okay,
On that.
But
we kept the meditation stuff quiet.
Yeah, but at the beginning of your
Seriously?
career,
Seriously?
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. Why did you start then? Like what?
I started transcendental meditation when I was a teenager in high school.
Yeah.
And then I did that for decades. I did that for a long time. And then I started experimenting with other forms of meditation. I studied Milton Ericksonian hypnotherapy. And I studied psychotherapy, the different mindfulness techniques, the cognitive therapy techniques. And I kind of blended them all together and picked and chose, and I made my own thing.
Well, why?
Because I think, as I say in the very first chapter, you need to rearrange your brain in order to accomplish big stuff.
But what was the awareness that you had in high school to actually do that? You don't meet high schoolers
I saw a
who do
poster
this.
of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi up on a screen. It said something like "Life is bliss." I said, "That's interesting. I think I'll go to the lecture."
Do you do yoga too?
I do yoga.
Yeah. Interesting. That is really fascinating. All right, so I'm like getting my head around that. Love that. So with this book, and I know we've talked about it before, I mean, what are you trying to inspire in other people, knowing what you've done so far and kind of laying this out? Because the title makes it feel like, hey, anybody can do this. I don't know that anybody can do it. Are you saying anybody can do this?
Depends what this is. I don't think anybody can make a few $1 billion because that's just mathematically, there's only a few people who do that. But I think anybody can rearrange their brain to think in a different way that's big, that's confident, that's strong, that's very off the beaten track, and accomplish great stuff. Now, that doesn't have to be making money. That can be all kinds of stuff. That can be just being a great mom or dad.
Right.
That can be a great artist. That can be a great musician. It can be a great anything. But yes, I think what I've shared in the book are the techniques that have worked for me in order to attract great people and to organize those people in a way to accomplish big things. And I think that can be taught.
One of the things I think about is, to be fair, like we'll have a lot of leaders in and talk about great people. But what is it that you think really people have to understand? What does that mean? Is it allowing them, like we talked about the Smucker CEO, and that company is allowing people to come to work, Tuesday to Thursday every other week? Like
that's not my culture at all.
But what is it to create great people? Like, what does that mean? How do you do that?
You need to think in your mind very clearly who you're trying to attract. What are the traits and qualities and characteristics that you're looking for? I know what those are very clearly for me. I look for people who are super smart. They've got to be smarter than me. Mm-hmm. Why do I want to depend on people less smart than me? I want to depend on people smarter than me. So I always try to get people who are hopefully significantly smarter than I am. They may not have this. I bring certain business talents and commercial sense to the table, leadership talents. But in terms of raw IQ, I like smart people. I really, really enjoy that. I want people with grit. I want people who are hungry, who want to work really, really hard, who actually like working, who's enjoyable. And then I want people who are honest as the day is long. I definitely don't want people who I'm trying to analyze what do they really mean.
Yeah.
I want people who are collegial and collaborative and team players and play well in the sandbox with each other, so that you can create, well, if you're an ant or you're a bee, a superorganism. I talk about that in the book. You want to create a culture that's a superorganism, not just a bunch of people, but a highly integrated group of people.
Is there a leader you admire?
Oh, lots of people. Yeah.
Is there one that you would share?
I admire Jeff Bezos. I admire Elon Musk, even though he has certain traits I don't admire. But I do admire his ability to think huge.
You brought up Elon Musk, so I want to go somewhere that Carol and I go each and every day, which is some people argue the biggest revolution when it comes to technology right now, and that's what's happening with AI. Certainly a lot has changed when it comes to computers and AI over your career. How do you think about harnessing AI, using it in your businesses, and even concerns that you might have about the technology?
I've always used technology to my advantage. All my companies have been tech forward, right from the very first one. So when I was in the oil business, way before the internet, our main edge was to have a rudimentary technology system to collect information globally about buyers and sellers of crude oil and refined products. When I was in the waste management business, we were the first ones to pioneer very advanced route optimization software. So the trucks weren't just randomly driving around, we were efficiently optimized what the routes were going to be. When I was in the construction equipment rental business, one of the first acquisitions we made, and we made hundreds of acquisitions, was a company called Win Systems, which was a way to record where all the equipment is, and we had billions of dollars of equipment, where everything was at any one point in time, and to predict it and monitor its utilization so that we could replenish the fleet where we needed it, where there was demand, and we'd know where to lower prices or raise prices depending on demand. XPO was all about technology. One of the first few people I hired was Mario Harek, now the CEO of XPO, who as my CIO, because the vision was to automate truck brokerage. Mm-hmm. And fast forward to today, we've spun that off as RXO. Drew Wilkerson runs it. And 98% of their orders are either sourced or covered electronically. That was 0% when we started the company. So yeah, I've always embraced technology. I think it's really important to do that.
Only have about 30, 40 seconds left here, so I'm going to ask you, but you say bigger is better in business most of the time, but not always. And I think in a world where we're always like wanting more, we even talk about companies, look at this market cap, they're number one. Why is this an important concept? And forgive me, Brett, because we only have about 30 seconds.
So over the last year, I've looked at dozens of industries and hundreds of companies, and I had a checklist of everything I wanted. Size, growth, fragmentation. One of them was bigger is better. That means there's economies of scale. In the case of QXO, the big economy of scale is purchasing power, procurement. Because if you buy lots of materials, you're going to get a cheaper price.
Promise you'll come back and as you build out your new business?
I always like to come on here because it seems like it was 1 minute.
I agree. And we learned something new about you, which was really fascinating. Brad Jacobs, thank you so much. Good luck with everything. Founder and chairman of XPO, of course. We've talked about his new book, How to Make a Few $1 Billion, and looking forward already to the future conversation. Be well.
Thank you.
You are listening and watching Bloomberg Radio.